Hello and welcome to another Mental Wealth Moves podcast. I'm your host, Casey Dubravcic, and today's podcast actually was derived from my 72-hour fast, which I completed on Monday evening. Started on Friday, and originally it wasn't meant to be a podcast. It was just meant to be a brief update. And I just got carried away and got into all sorts of interesting topics. So listen in, you'll find out more about trauma, you'll find out more about processing, you'll find out more about the ethos and delivery at Rocked Wellness Bar. You'll find out about some of the science of fasting, who should fast and who shouldn't fast. You'll also get some interesting political diatribes, so prepare yourself for that. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening, and make it a great day. Remember, what's good for you is good for the universe, and let's get right into it.
So I wanted to give everyone an update, a little bit longer one, on how my fasting went. So I started the fast on Friday evening, right before Flow Friday. I had a bag of carrot sticks while I was watching this video from Joe Dispenza that my friend Dr. James Leatham sent to me from Advanced Pain and Wellness down in the Valley. And really cool stuff, like really interesting, very empowering. It reminded me how important fasting is and all of the health, wealth, mental, psychological, physical, spiritual benefits of fasting can bring us. And so I decided to do a 72-hour fast. It's been a while since I've done any fasting. I always enjoy it when I do it, the after effects, in addition to feeling physically well from doing any sort of fasting. It had been a while, though, honestly, since I had done any intentional fasting for any therapeutic duration. I would say any fasting less than 24 hours, probably not going to notice much of anything as far as benefits. Otherwise, you're just hungry. The intermittent fasting is decent. I think there's some science behind that, but I wouldn't really call that fasting. I just call that eating on a schedule. And I think a real therapeutic fasting has to be at least 24 hours. And that's really what the literature supports as far as more benefits long term. We're fed so much processed food and so much stabilizers and heavily refined foods and densely caloric, largely toxin rich foods in our daily diet. You eat out at all, you're exposed to the oils that we know aren't great for us. We know you're exposed to all sorts of things. Even if you're just flying around a decent amount, like a cross country flight is more radiation than you get from a chest X-ray. And who knows long-term benefits of these 5G phones, these digital leashes, right, that are in our pockets or close to our person all the time. Talk about toxins. And so with that, I think it's important to recognize there's lots of ways to detox. I'm a big fan of sauna. I know the sauna a few times a week, at least 3 times a week, for if you're infrared sauna, 30 minutes, and if you're traditional sauna, between 50 and 90. And so infrared sauna is just a faster detox at a lower temperature, pretty beneficial all around. And so that's a way to detox, and fasting is a great way to detox. And so if you're intentionally treating your body to a detoxification period where you're not ingesting more potentially toxifying foods and or just giving your bowels and your alimentary canal a break. It really helps reset a lot of different things. And so, it's are you going to lose a lot of weight in 3 days? Probably not. Should you be fasting just to lose weight? Definitely not. You should be fasting more so when you're already in a good space than when you're in a deregulated, not great headspace or physical space. Fasting can actually have deleterious effects because your body's already so dang unsafe, and then you starve it. It doesn't like that. And that's what the literature would suggest as well. And so the reason that I am a big proponent of fasting, again, is the detoxification. And so I'll give you a little breakdown of how my fasting went. So started on Friday night, and I just had a bag of carrot sticks. Like I said, watch that video from Joe Dispenza. It was a great video. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Dr. James Leatham, my friend. Again, one of the owners of Advanced Pain and Wellness down in the Valley, another ketamine clinic. And then I was probably the hungriest. It was hard, like that, just even that night, because normally I have a couple rock tails. Instead of mocktails, we do rock tails at Rock Wellness Bar, the functional mushroom elixirs and nootropics, and always a little socially uplifting, engaging. I like my friend Will. He says the reverse hangover. So you still get a lot of the pro-social benefits of having the rock tails without the, deleterious effects that, you'd get with alcohol, obviously. And so I normally look forward to those on Flow Friday. And I didn't get to have those, so that was sad for me. It's like that FOMO, right? That comes. And then it's like, all right, well, not a big deal. And then I didn't even realize when I started it, I didn't remember that it was Super Bowl Sunday. Oh my gosh, that was the worst. Because Jill, my wife, made this amazing food. And it all looked so good. And Hudson, my son, made delicious looking food too. And I just go over there and get free smells. Those were probably the two hardest times. Waking up Saturday morning, so that was just 12 hours after. I was probably the hungriest at that time, really. The hungriest that time, and a few hours before the fast ended. And so I don't recommend going over 72 hours for a fast, food or water fast, when you're in a good headspace or when you're in a good... and again, I don't recommend fasting when you're not in a good headspace or physical space or spiritual space. I would recommend more of a elimination diet when you're not in a good headspace. There's a few of them that are pretty good. I think the Whole30 is pretty good as far as an elimination diet. Eliminates most all of pro-inflammatory food, and then any elimination diet, you'd want to slowly reintroduce everything because your body has a chance to kind of regroup from all that. There's really cool anecdotal evidence all over of water fasts like that, starving cancerous processes, really markedly reducing inflammation. And so you should be considering 72-hour fasts once a quarter and 24-hour fasts or 48-hour fasts once a month. And so weekends are good times to do that. And it definitely depends on your physical activity. I don't recommend fasts for everyone by any stretch of the imagination. You'd always talk to your healthcare provider about your particular situation. Some people, again, fasting would be a terrible idea. And so I want to be very clear about that. I was in a good headspace. I was in all the good things. And Sunday, so Friday evening, again, Flow Friday, that ended around 11 or midnight. Cleaned up, went home. Then Saturday, I worked in Sedona at our office in Sedona. And Saturday, I was in Prescott Valley on Saturday. Friday, I worked in Sedona. And Prescott Valley was great. Got to work on some cool stuff. Felt pretty energized, felt pretty clean. I feel really clean right now. I know I just ate at Chili's last night, which is probably less than clean. But I was really jonesing for those chips. Those are so good. The chips and salsa there. Probably, caked in oil and all sorts of stuff. Everything in moderation, including moderation. It matters less what you eat and how mindful you are with your eating. Really taking your time and savoring the flavor. Like I somewhat joke, and I still believe it though, honestly. You can eat chocolate cake and all day, every day, and eat it really mindfully, like really taking the bites and savoring the flavor and really kind of being mindful of what that food, what that sustenance, what those calories, what those components that make up a chocolate cake would be like feeling like in your mouth and in your body. And so really eating very slowly is the trick. Like being like, and I was very cognizant of that last night when I was eating at Chili's. It's like just that first bite and just in general, just all the different flavors and really recognizing how valuable this human experience is, right? And so I think in general, we are human doings at this point, and we don't give ourselves enough space to be human beings. And so, again, you can eat junk food, what people would consider junk food, and eat it very mindfully. And I would argue that you could be healthier in that than you would be like wolfing down all the vegetables and all the fruits, in large part because of the mindset that comes with I need to eat this, I need to eat this. And so really it's more of a mindset and mindfulness component of eating, that of what you put in your body, right? Treating everything as sacred, treating the how you feed your temple, right? Like this is awesome. Like I'm so lucky to be a human being with a heart that's beating and with a head that can think things, and with that capacity to make the decision to get on here today while I'm driving and to be able to record this and to be able to share this with the universe, my experience. Like it's such an amazing time to be alive. You have availability of so much information. You have availability of so many tools, and you have the science to back those. Like I talk about how it's such a wonderful time to be in medicine, and I truly believe that. We're proving past wisdom with science. There's a lot of science out there that is less than stellar. I'll be clear about that. And the science that's touted, I feel like in some ways we're living in idiocracy. Like you show me the studies that they're sourcing and that they're touting as what proves this or disproves this point, and then you look at the abstract even, you're like, that doesn't prove that. Like, did you see that P number? Did you see the N? Like, if anything, it potentially is corollary, definitely not causatory with the amount of information that they're citing in the study. And so it's like people say, oh, it's backed by scientific studies. It's like, well, no. If anything, that scientific study that person is referencing in regards to that, you should read that. If you have a question about like, hey, does that really make sense? Go read that study, and if you're curious to learn, then you'll probably be able to figure it out. And if you look up p-values, I mean, you can take a PDF right now, you can upload it to ChatGPT, and you can be like, hey, what does this say about COVID or autism? Like, let's just stick to the hottest button points, right? And then it'll spit out like what? Well, I don't know. That one probably will, but it'll tell you kind of what a p-value is. It'll tell you, N of 12 is small when it comes to a study. It'll tell you that the exclusion criteria and the inclusion criteria should give you cause for pause. And so, again, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be alive. I think it's important to recognize that we win the lottery to be born into this existence, right? That we were competing with millions and millions of swimmers from your father, and hundreds and thousands of eggs from your mom. you got the best genetic material from all of your ancestors going back and back and back. And that's pretty awesome, right? Like there aren't too many combinations of your mom and dad. Even if they have 10 kids, that's not very many. And so be aware of that, be cognizant of that, try to bring that into your field on a daily basis of how there is that positivity that we can tap into, right? And at the same time, like I don't like that good vibe sticker. Well, I do like it, but I think of it, the good vibe sticker, as bad vibes and good vibes, right? Because there's no such thing as bad emotion. There's bad emotional reactions. So if you're really freaking sad all the time, there's probably a reason for that. Like there's probably something about your situation that has stunk in the past or stinks now. And so being aware of that, or your perception of that, right? And so the biggest thing we can do with alchemy, with like Paul Camo's The Alchemist, is really turning, that situation, like from this happened to me to this happened for me, right? And so I think of that whole book as an allegory, as like a parable, as a teaching story. Like everything is what you make it, right? Man's search for meaning, there's Viktor Frankl. There's a ton of availability of knowledge out there, and deep understanding, and reading those things and assimilating that. You can scratch the surface. Really, you need to feel that in yourself. If you don't feel that, there's lots of ways to get there. Revitalize Ketamine Clinic offers lots of options when people feel stuck. Up to 95% effective for suicidality, which is just bonkers to me. And I see that every day. Again, it's a catalyst, not a cure. Nothing's a cure, nothing's a panacea, nothing's a silver bullet. There's a million silver BBs, right? And so fasting can be one of those silver BBs that you can put in your toolbox that can help you thrive. Like, I don't want people surviving. I want people thriving. So that's what Rocked is all about, right? Revitalizing. So like the vision behind Rocked is Revitalized Ketamine Clinic fits right in there, like as a portion of Rocked. And so revitalize, like recognizing that things could be better, recognizing that you're stuck, recognizing that you're taking these daily medications, or you're stuck in this situation that don't feel good. That's the best argument for daily medications, is that there's something about your situation that stinks. And sometimes that's the society that you live in, and you're unable or unwilling to change aspects of that. And so, I'll give you a daily medication, and I'll help you hopefully treat that root cause. That root cause is really where the magic starts happening. And so being aware of that as you're moving forward, so powerful. And then optimizing, right? Like the optimize, so revitalize, optimize, and harmonize. Clinic and Therapeutics Rocked. So optimize is that daily practice. So once you're revitalized, once you're feeling a little bit better, because optimizing and harmonizing are just words if you aren't revitalized first. Like you can't do those things. You're going through the motions. You aren't revitalized, and so you can't really optimize. You can start making those moves, and you can go to the gym, and you can meditate, and you can go to yoga. If you aren't revitalized, you're just keeping your head out of water with those practices. You aren't living your ultimately best life. And so we need those resets periodically. There's this really cool book called The Immortality Key, The Secret History of Religion with No Name. And I really like it because it really speaks to the history of mankind in large part, up to about 12,000 BC, and talks about the use of ego dissolution agents similar to ketamine, on average about quarterly, as part of the human condition, needing a chemical reset in a tribal type environment. And so that's really where the magic happens, is when you can break bread, when you connect with people in doing that deep work for yourself. Again, what's good for you is good for the universe. So remember that, like truly and deeply, so powerful. This fasting was good for me. And so you're welcome, universe. And you're welcome, me, and you're welcome everyone watching this. Like, I'm very happy to have done that fast. It had been too long since I've done a therapeutic fasting like that, and I'm very happy that I did. And I'm going to bring that into my awareness, bring that into my field, bring that into my practice, and start doing those again, every 2 to 4 months in that range, and just be very mindful about how I utilize that practice. And if I'm not in a good headspace for some reason, stressing about a bunch of things, again, I wouldn't do a fasting at that time either. Okay, so we're all moving target. I got to make that super clear. I love that Ram Dass quote. Just when you think you're in a good headspace, go spend a weekend with your family. They know all the buttons to press. They know all the kind of things to do to kind of put you at a what? What did you just say? Really? And it's, part of the human condition again, the journey to wellness is just that. It's a journey. There's no destination. You might plateau along the way, and hopefully you're feeling better about yourself and your existence your entire life. That's really what I want to help people get to. And so the optimizing is that daily practice, that meditation, that mindfulness in your activities, that human connection, the importance and value that you place on relationships. That's a side note that I think is interesting. I'll dive into real quick. I'm not a big proponent of people thinking that they're introverts. Like, you may not get off on being with large groups of people. Like, that's fine. And we're all bred to be social creatures. If you're not feeling safe, or you feel like you have to perform in front of people, like you feel like you have to be a caricature of what people expect of you, or if you have to feel like you're putting on this mask every time you're interacting with people, and you're basing your actions and your reactions based on what you think that they want to see, what they want to hear, what they want to feel from you, then yeah, that's going to be exhausting. No thank you. And that's really where I think introverts think that they're introverted, is like, you're going to be so tired interacting with humans if that's how you interact with humans. And those types of it's a coping strategy, I would argue, is very much born out of where you come from, right? We're all products of our environment. And so with that, you learn your emotional regulation skills from your parents, pretty much exclusively. And emotional regulation skills, I would say, are how to handle difficult people, difficult situations, and difficult emotions. And so we learn those pretty much exclusively from our parents from ages 0 to 11, peers 12 to 19, and romantic relationships 19 and up in general. And so that being said, if your parents were not taught those emotional regulation skills, you should not and could not be expected to, or they could not have been expected to teach them to you. And so, very much so, all that is healable, it's growable. That's what dialectical behavioral therapy, Marshall Linehan, is kind of born off of, is that understanding that you can work on it. It's skills, micro skills, right? And so I like Alex Hormozy's stuff. Empathy, like we talk about empathy as like this bucket, or this skill that people have or don't have, and he disagrees, and I agree with him on the disagreement, that really it's 100 micro skills, right? It's like making eye contact with a person. It's like human connection and touch when it's therapeutic and accurate, like touching between the wrist and elbow, just to let people know that they're seen and they're heard and they're felt. Listening first, right? I like what Jill, my wife, always says, is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that's so powerful and so beautiful. So, and that's so accurate too when it comes to any clinician. And so really understanding that as you're optimizing, as you're cultivating connection, as you're finding your tribe and building your tribe, like again, Rock Wellness Bar, I'm trying to really create the notion like this is a social place, right? We have open mic night on Wednesdays. We have Flow Friday on Fridays. We have Sound Healing Sunday coming. we've got 2 cool new workshops in development. One is like a Wim Hof type breathing, but not Wim Hof. It's all sorts of, it's Wim Hof and other things. It's so many different breath techniques that can center you, that can bring you and your awareness back into a safe place, and get out of the human doing, downregulate and upregulate the autonomic nervous system, and downregulate and upregulate the parasympathetic nervous system, right? And so the autonomic, fight or flight, the parasympathetic, the rest and digest. And so you can activate and increase both of those through breath work. And you should be able to exist in a homeostasis where you can shift from just kind of chill mode to, or just kind of like, I would say, like I like Aubrey Marcus's like the meditating lion, right? Like, so you should be able to shift from just being in kind of rest mode to, well, rest isn't the right word. You should be in waiting mode where there's no good or bad most of the time. And you should be able to shift to those extremes. And I mean, so like it's a bell curve, right? And so at the top is the waiting, and then just barely shifted to the right is the rest and digest, and barely shifted to the left is the fight or flight. And you should be able to shift from both of those easily. And it's about remembering how capable you are of doing that. And I feel like breath work is a really fast way to get there. So the like ketamine treatments, it's not great for business. I like to tell people no one needs ketamine. No one needs an ego dissolution agent. A million other ways to get to a healthier headspace. And in general, some people will take decades to get there, if ever, without having some sort of catalyst. It's because the cards are stacked against you, in large part. So, everything comes from trauma, big capital bold T's, little italic T's, of trauma, and you can assume what I mean by that, or listen to my other podcasts where I go in depth on the big capital bold T's, little italic T's. And then we know trauma is super subjective. We know there's the 4 types of trauma, your own historical trauma, everything since conception as far as stressors and catecholamines that you've been exposed to. And then we know the intergenerational, the 5 generations behind us at least, of that hereditary reaction to trauma. I had the best visualization of that with a client that I was treating recently, where he said he was a young child, like 8 years old, and he was watching a movie or something, and one of those sonar pings came on, and he immediately went into like this intense reaction. Psychotic break almost is how he described it, like extreme fight, flight, or freeze. And, I had no idea what was going on. It wasn't until later in his teen years that he found out his grandfather worked on a submarine and they almost died. They got hit by torpedoes. They were underwater for an extended period of time. There was an extrication process, and the sonar like that was going off the whole time. And so what a great kind of visualization and experience of that intergenerational trauma being held and how that expresses itself, right? There's a rosewater study in mice that shows a similar kind of reasons and demonstrable outcomes of exposing these mice or rats to rosewater and then extreme trauma, and then doing that repetitively to condition that response, and then stopping exposing them to rosewater, stopping traumatizing them, and then not exposing any generation, letting them procreate until their 5th generation below them to rosewater, and immediately registering a fight, flight, or freeze response. So it's like, oh, there you go. So again, it's held in our cells, it's held genetically, and it's a really powerful thing. Like, you want that kind of hypervigilance when you're living in a township surrounded by saber-toothed tigers. You don't want everyone to think things are safe when they aren't safe, right? And so that's super powerful. I love that. And then the 3rd type of trauma, and this is really the one that, in general, I think is the heaviest load on most people. Again, we're the best genetic material, right? Like, so the first 2 types, we're doing pretty good. That's why adopted kids are have so much more challenges because they're caregivers. While they may be amazing caregivers and meet all of their needs, they really just don't get each other. They just don't understand each other at a core level, and so that can be really hard to navigate and heal from. And then the third type of trauma, that's societal trauma. That's in general living in a patriarchal, capitalistic society with an economy of scale and a largely disconnected family unit. It's pretty bad for our brains, and that's the reality that we kind of grew up in. Oh, my mom's calling. I'm going to take this and then I'll start recording again. All right. So starting off where I left, had a great conversation with my mom. Thanks for bearing with me during that long break. And she's awesome. Should do an interview with her on the podcast. She's so much cooler than anybody. she's awesome. So yes, I was talking about optimizing. I was talking about the importance of a daily practice after revitalizing, right? If you're optimizing before revitalizing, like if you're still stuck in a hole in some ways, optimizing isn't really optimizing, I would argue. It's more surviving. Like you're doing all these coping strategies that can be really good, that really, if you aren't in a good headspace, they're just keeping your head above water. You're surviving, you aren't thriving, right? Like daily yoga practice and meditation and all these things. Without having that revitalization process first, you aren't fully benefiting from the optimization process. It's really not optimizing. And so there's a whole list of things, and we really try to implement all of those at Rock. Again, that building community, physical activity, tribe, community. I talked about that. Workshops, breath work, red light therapy, the hug flower, lymphatic massage, the in sauna. People need to sauna, and the evidence is in. If you aren't saunaing, the amount of toxins that we're exposed to, even the healthiest people, you are doing yourself a large disservice. There's a ton of toxins that we're exposed to on a daily that we need to detoxify from. And saunaing is one of those fastest ways. In addition to fasting, fasting is a great way for your body's natural healing ability to come back online if you're in a good space. If you're in a bad space, it can be detrimental in some ways. And I talked about that. And then there's so many things to optimize. And we really have the cold water immersion, right? Basically surviving something challenging. That's part of the science of the fasting as well. And then the harmonizing, right? The harmonizing is that Japanese ikigai. And that's that overlap of those four, like that Venn diagram, right? The circles. So like what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what the world needs, and what you get paid for. And those are really, really powerful in regards to, that's where we should be devoting our energy, right? And so the problem is, since Rockefeller era, this school system in large part is not great for our brains. The public educational sector is creating good employees, not good thinkers. Same thing with higher education. I would say that there's an indoctrination on the other side that happens in higher education at this point. And it really brought some things to light to me of, I wouldn't say I'm a conspiracy theorist. That being said, I think there's something to kind of the powers that be. Like I listened to Dead Kennedys growing up, right? And so like California Uber Alice, there's Police Truck. There's some songs out there that that have some lasting power and political activism. And so like there's very in-depth forms of population control that are brought to us by real high powers up. And that's good for like the powers that be in some ways. And so I think some of the like worldwide indoctrination of like the LGBTQIA, normalizing that will allow for ultimately less procreation, likely, and less procreation is a form of kind of population control and civilization control. And so, just zoom out and follow the money. Some of the things that USAID was funding, like the LGBTQIA, like $1 million play in Liberia or something. This is some interesting stuff that organization was part of. I like the line items that get pulled out of that, just because it really brings to light where our tax dollars ultimately are going. And so, should we be spending hundreds of millions of dollars kind of pushing the LGBTQIA movement worldwide? I don't think so. Like, I think if I like the like this yes and movement, right? Like, I love LGBTQIA people probably too much sometimes. People think I swing that way. I don't. I'm happily married, but like I think it's great. Like, I love love, right? I think that's super powerful, and so I want to be clear about that. I don't have hate for anybody. Like, I think everyone's doing the best they can with what they have. That all being said, I think it's important to recognize, as you're like looking at like where you're coming from and what you're working on, that there isn't a like hard line anywhere, nor should there be. Like, everything is flexible when it comes to kind of where you're developing, where you're putting your energy. I lost my train of thought to some extent here. And so I might go back and look at the video and see where I ended on that. I found it, indoctrination. And so I do think that there is a lot of pressure, and I think it's lessened, which I think is good, on people going to higher education to pursue their goals. I was pre-med, and then like I did a bunch of things. I followed a bunch of docs, and in general, like the amount of schooling and the payoff that can give you, I think that is glamorized and glorified more than it ought to have been for most people. Most people, especially in the Western medical sector, go into medical school thinking they're going to save the world. I think it's Casey Means. She was like a Harvard or Stanford trained, like really high level doc, and they talk about how siloed medicine is at this point. So like really specialized to the point where you're giving very focal interventions, and you don't have a big zoomed out view, which and I liked what's his name? I don't know. He talked about the complicated solutions for complex problems normally is not great. The amount of sequela that come from that, and I believe that, like, as a whole, that the simplest solutions are often not only the most elegant, also the most encompassing. And so, that's why one-liners are so powerful, right? What's good for you is good for the universe. Those types of things. And so really boiling it down to simple is often the move. And so with that, I think that higher education can be good, but I don't think that it's the answer for most people, honestly. We want to inspire our youth, and so get them fired up on how they could potentially, live their best lives. And so for that, a lot of people is, doing that ikigai, right? Again, one more time, what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for, that overlap in that center, that little spot. That's where we should be devoting energy. I feel like we should do aptitude testing early in school, like kindergarten or first grade, and do it again in fifth grade and eighth grade and ninth grade and 10th grade. And then help hone people's gifts. Because honestly, I tell people, especially for ADHD, I'm never medicating for you. I'm medicating for society. Society is what sucks. Like, we're trying to create this like mold of people, like standardized testing. Ugh, like that stinks. I like, again, Alex Hormozy's like, we should gamify school, not just like, you get an A, now forget most of that stuff and come back after the summer. And then you'll learn it slightly differently. It's like, okay, once you've learned how to do addition, like check, all right, good job, you get 13 points. And then you learn how to do subtraction, okay, you get 13 points. You learn how to do division, you get 26 points. And then as you get to 100 points, you get like level gold. And then okay, you've learned integrals, you've learned differential equations, you've learned linear equations, okay, you get 216 points. Your level platinum D, whatever. Like, have like accolades and hit that dopamine track to inspire people when they're interested in it. And some people will be on bronze level of mathematics for their whole life. That's great. Good. There's enough stuff in place now that we want people to just be smart enough to not get taken advantage of, right? And so that's the systems that need to take place for rock and harmonizing to really hit ultimately and be able to come. And I see these microcosms of growth across all the aspects of things that I am exposing myself to. And so again, just like anyone else, right? Put yourself in that learning state. Like, I don't know what I don't know. And all I can say is that I've educated myself in a lot of different fronts, and not all the fronts, right? So there's probably a bunch of things I'm not aware of that aren't in my field. And it's so interesting to me, again, not to harp on politics because I don't think it's helpful, how much I hated Donald Trump. Like, I hated him. Like, I had a real, like, I thought he was just a terrible human being, leading up to right before RFK, endorsed him. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I'm listening to RFK's stuff. People like are painting him in such an odd light, where they say he's anti-vaccines. He's never said he's anti-vaccines. He said he's anti-bad science. He's come out of that multiple times. Some things get taken so out of context, and they get held in this highest light, like the Hitler salute. Like, I saw a meme after, and I've got a Cybertruck that saved my son and I's life. And again, I don't think anyone's evil. Like, there's bad and good in everyone, just like there's the divine feminine and masculine in everyone. And so you've got to do your own research, and so, like, you look at that and you look at what speech he was saying leading up to that and what he said after that, and you look at there was this meme that came out like right after that one. And again, I don't know what I don't know. So if someone knows something more than I do, I'd love to hear more than that. And there was like Elizabeth Warren doing something similar, and it was Bernie Sanders doing something similar, Joe Biden doing something similar, and then there was like one other person on the other side of this political spectrum, right? Like, politicians, career politicians in particular, are doing a great job of dividing, and that makes me sad. Like, I do want unity. I want like the yes and. We have way more in common with our fellow country people across the voting lines than we do have apart with them, and that needs to be reiterated, right? And so there's so many ways to remember that. Like I said, I had a very heavy disdain for Donald Trump. I thought he was just the worst human being. And then I listened to some long form stuff. First, it was JD Vance, right? Because they had portrayed him as the weirdest, like hardest, like just an oddball. Like they said, well, weird JD Vance. And I listened to him. He's a military guy, and yeah, military messes up a lot of people. He is not weird. He's like really, like, once you start, like, I think a 2-hour interview, and again, I'm driving a lot, so I can expose myself to this kind of stuff. It's quite eye-opening in regards to, what people's like core beliefs are in their ethics system. And so that exposure for me was incredibly valuable, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I learned about how biased I can become based on what I'm exposed to, and so maybe I'm the other way now. Maybe I'm totally off in what I'm saying, and I'm welcome to entertain that. That being said, I think we're on the precipice of a human evolution. Biggest shift will be going from the no because to the yes and. I'm a big fan of what Elon is doing, and so hate me if you will. That's your choice. I don't hate you. I love you. And seriously, I have love for everyone and everything. Because I know what's good for you is good for the universe. So ultimately, I benefit, right? And so, I like that Buddhist saying, "What holding on to resentment is like swallowing poison and expecting someone else to die." I don't like that. I think, okay, and I'll just go off on this just because this is my podcast, and so you guys have to listen to it if you want to, or you can skip it. And so, what I think is that Elon is doing good things. I think that he is a patriot. I think that he does want the best for everyone. And I think he's frustrated with the system. Like, he was tied up in a bunch of things, and he's been navigating a bunch of challenging waters when it comes to litigation, when it comes to um, government, big government and bureaucracy levels. Like, if anyone's worked in an organization of over 100 people and you've tried to make improvements, you know how challenging, how many roadblocks you get to. You're like, this is such an inefficient process. What if we do this and this and this? And you bring it to someone and they're like, oh yeah, bring it to this person. And then you bring it to that person. And then like, oh yeah, well, let me bring it to this person. And then you just never hear anything back. And so, like, if anything, it's an obstructionist system, which I think is good. Like, our forefathers, like, they were smart. And if you look at the Kybalion, Kybalion, I think a lot of the founding fathers may have had some of that verbal tradition carried forth in regards to the Hermetic truths, right? As above, so below, law of attraction, those types of things. Really interesting read. I feel like it's a lot of universal truths, like the core of us. Like, I feel like those are truthful and you can understand them. And so, they did a great job with the checks and balances with the judicial system, the executive branch, and the legislative branch, and kind of understanding that, hey, like, you try to do some really dumb stuff, like, these guys can block you. That being said, like, the whole polarization, right? It's like, I want to kill babies. I don't want to kill babies. It's like, you boil it down, right? And then it's like, wait, what? And, it's like, no one wants to kill babies. And no one wants, like, you to be, exposed to so much hatred that you have to carry a baby to term when you're exposed to some real extreme prejudice and violence. Like, I don't think so, anyways. Again, I don't think anything's inherently evil or good, right? The dose makes the medicine and the dose makes the poison. So a 72-hour fast was really good for me. And it's not good for everyone. I really enjoyed it. I started on fasting and I really got, like, kind of on multiple tangents. So hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. I know it's kind of out there from my normal content. I just, went on some tangents in regards to politics and other things that maybe, not the best, especially where I hail from. But I just want to speak my truth. And if you guys are interested in that, you'll hear that. If you aren't interested in that, then, maybe you'll tune in less, which I don't want you to. Again, I love you. Yeah. So this is Casey. I say I love my 72-hour fast. I think it made me feel really good. And I want you to be able to experience the wonderfulness of rocked. I think it's a great precursor to and or aftercare for Revitalized Ketamine Clinic. You can get that revitalization, right, that catalyst, without having a ketamine treatment. Have I seen decades of work done in a single ketamine treatment, and definitely through a series of 6? Yes, I have. And it is, I got the chills yesterday watching this dude just work through some amazing things that he had been holding on to for a really long time. And, I'm very happy that you're here. I'm very happy that you listened this far, and I appreciate you, and I want the best for you. Remember, what's good for you is good for the universe. Remember that the best investment you can ever make is yourself. And that's why we call it Mental Wealth Moves. So thank you for tuning in for another episode of Mental Wealth Moves, where I go and talk about all sorts of things. And I talk about the benefits of a 72-hour fast for me, and potential pitfalls around fasting for others. And so, and I talk about many other side topics, including how to live your best life, including some conspiracy theories, and including, making the best of what you have, including modern day alchemy. I'm the owner and founder of Revitalized Ketamine Clinics, as well as Rocked Wellness Bar, and I'm co-founder of Epic Biosciences. And this is Casey Dubravcic, psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. Mental Wealth Moves, signing off. Remember, what's good for you is good for the universe.
All right. Thank you for tuning in to another Mental Wealth Moves podcast. I'm your host, Casey Dubravcic, psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, founder and visionary behind Revitalized Ketamine Clinic and Rocked Wellness Bar. If you or a loved one is suffering and feels like they would like to be slightly better versions of themselves and get some potential relief, there is hope. We can help. Reach out today. Remember, what's good for you is good for the universe. Also remember, the reason for the title of this podcast, Mental Wealth Moves, is that the best investment you can ever make is in yourself. Remember that and make it a great day.